You're the only kind of human on Earth. Look around. Every single person you have ever met belongs to one species, one narrow twig on the entire branching tree of life. This feels normal. It feels like the obvious endpoint of evolution, the natural order of things, the way it was always meant to be. But it is one of the strangest facts about your existence. And for almost all of the time that humans have walked this planet, it simply was not true. For most of the last few 100,000 years, you would not have been alone. There were others, other kinds of human, walking the same valleys, hunting the same herds, sheltering from the same storms, and looking up at the same moon with eyes that were not quite like yours. The most famous of them had a heavy brow, a wide barrel chest, and a brain slightly larger than the one inside your own skull right now. You know them as Neanderthals. And here's the question that quietly haunts the people who study them for a living. What if they had never disappeared? To even ask that, you have to throw out almost everything you think you know about them. For a century, the word Neanderthal was an insult, a dim-witted brute, a knuckle-dragging caveman, hunched and grunting, too stupid to survive. That picture was wrong. It was wrong from the very beginning, and it came partly from a single skeleton. That skeleton belonged to an old man, and he was riddled with arthritis. When scientists first reconstructed him in the early 1900s, they assumed the stoop was normal. It wasn't. They had built their entire idea of a species around one sick, elderly individual. The real Neanderthals were something else entirely. They survived in Ice Age Europe for more than 300,000 years. Think about that number. 300,000 years of brutal winters, of hunting animals that could kill you with a single kick, of raising children in a world with no medicine and no second chances. Your own species in its current form has existed for only a fraction of that. So how do we know what they were really like? This is where the evidence stack begins, and it is remarkable. Start with the genome. A genome is simply the full set of genetic instructions inside a living thing, the complete code that builds a body. In 2010, a Swedish geneticist named Svante Pääbo did something most scientists thought was impossible. Working at the Max Planck Institute, he and his team extracted DNA from Neanderthal bones tens of thousands of years old, and they sequenced it. They read the code of a vanished kind of human. The work was so important that Pääbo was awarded the Nobel Prize in 2022. And what that code revealed changed the story completely. The Neanderthals were not a dead end. They were not a failed experiment. They were a sophisticated, intelligent, deeply human kind of human. They controlled fire. They made specialized tools. They wore animal hides against the cold. And they cared for each other in ways that should make you stop and feel something. Consider Shanidar Cave in the mountains of northern Iraq. In the 1950s and 60s, an archaeologist named Ralph Selecki excavated a series of Neanderthal skeletons there, and one of them told an extraordinary story. The man, later studied in detail by the anthropologist Eric Trinkhaus, had been horribly injured. A withered, possibly amputated arm, a crushed eye socket that likely left him blind on one side, damage to his legs that would have made him limp badly, and yet he had survived all of it. For years. A blind, one-armed, limping man does not survive years in the Ice Age alone. Someone fed him. Someone protected him. Someone decided that a man who could no longer hunt was still worth keeping alive. That is not brutishness. That is compassion, etched into bone 40,000 years old. So let's reconstruct a day. Picture it. The sun comes up gray and cold over a European valley. You are part of a small band, maybe a dozen of you, huddled near the mouth of a cave. Your breath fogs in the air. The fire from last night is down to embers, and a child blows on it patiently until it catches again. You eat the cold remains of yesterday's hunt. Then the adults check their spears, heavy wooden shafts tipped with stone points you napped yourself, and you move out into the snow to track a reindeer herd. You are strong, astonishingly strong, far stronger than any living human. Your body is built like a furnace, short and thick to hold in heat. You know this landscape the way you know your own hands. And you are not afraid of being alone in the world because in your world, you never have been. Because somewhere over those hills, there is another kind of human, taller, thinner, newer. They came up out of Africa, and they are spreading into your land, and for thousands of years, your two peoples will share the same continent. You will meet them. You will trade with them. And sometimes you will fall in love with them. This is where the twist comes, and it is the strangest part of the whole story. The Neanderthals did not simply vanish. Around 40,000 years ago, their numbers thinned. The last of them seemed to have clung on at the very edges of Europe. At Gorham's Cave in Gibraltar, the researcher Clive Finlayson and his team found signs of some of the latest surviving Neanderthals of all, including a strange crosshatched pattern scratched deliberately into the rock wall. An abstract design, a mark made for no practical reason. Possibly the closest thing we have to a Neanderthal thought, frozen in stone, and then they were gone. The last separate population of Neanderthals disappeared. But here is what Svante Pääbo's genome work proved beyond any doubt. They did not disappear completely. They never fully went extinct. They went into you. When that newer kind of human met the Neanderthals, the two groups did not just fight, they interbred. They had children together, and those children had children, and that line of descent runs unbroken all the way down to the present day. If your ancestry traces to anywhere outside of Africa, then roughly 1 to 2% of your entire genome is Neanderthal. Read that again. A part of you is them. So the question we started with, the great what if, turns out to be a trick. What if Neanderthals had never gone extinct? In the deepest, most literal sense, they didn't. The experiment already ran. The two kinds of human merged, and the result is sitting here reading these words. And those genes are not just sitting quietly. They are doing things right now inside your body. Some of the Neanderthal DNA you carry shapes your skin and your hair. Some of it tunes your immune system, the network of cells that fights off infection, helping your ancestors survive the new diseases of a new continent. Some of it affects how your body handles cold or pain or sleep. And in a discovery that felt almost unbelievable when it came out, researchers found that a stretch of Neanderthal DNA carried by millions of living people is linked to how severely some of them respond to certain modern viruses. A choice made by two people on a cold European hillside 40,000 years ago is, in a small way, still rippling through hospitals today. Now think about what was lost and what was kept. The Neanderthals as a separate people are gone. Their language, if they had one, is silent. Their songs, their names for things, their stories told around the fire, all of it vanished with the last of them. We will never hear it. But their blood did not vanish. Their strength, their cold-adapted bodies, some fragment of the way they saw the world, all of it was folded into the human story instead of erased from it. So when you imagine a world where Neanderthals survived alongside us, a world with two kinds of intelligent humans sharing the planet, remember that it is not entirely fiction. For thousands of years, that world existed. Two peoples, two minds, looking at each other across a valley and choosing, at least sometimes, connection over conquest. The clean, lonely idea that you are the single surviving human species is true only on the surface. Underneath, you are a blend, a reunion, the living echo of a meeting between two kinds of people, one of whom we mistakenly called primitive for 100 years. So look around again, at the people near you, at your own hands. You were never the only kind of human on Earth. You are what happened when two of them refused to stay strangers, and you have been carrying the other one inside you your entire life.